everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of our Monday Night Live. Today we are absolutely privileged to be joined by Rev Jason Bray. Jason will be joining us. He's going to share his story with us and talk about his book, Deliverance, which he's going to share some of his experience out of this book, as well as some of the church's thoughts in regards to the paranormal and his experiences he has been going throughout. One of the first things I wanted to ask you, and for those who may not know, what is a Deliverance Minister?
Okay, Deliverance Minister is somebody that's basically appointed by the church to deal with the paranormal. So in the old days, you might have called us exorcists, but we don't tend to call ourselves that now, partly after the Exorcist film, which basically sort of, I suppose, gave people a slightly false impression of what we do. So, Deliverance Ministers do that, but we spend quite a lot of our time what you might call doing ghost busting, which isn't quite the same thing, but that's so ghostbuster, exorcist, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So is that the reason they changed it from being called an exorcist, is because of the film and sort of the Hollywood sort of stigma with it all?
Yeah, it sort of could be, really. It was. Basically, when the the church has always had sort of people like me who were sort of specialists, but the whole thing was sort of professionalized sometime in the 1970s, and at that stage they decided that what they needed was sort of something something which gave a sort of better general impression of what we were doing, and so they developed the idea of deliverance ministers. Because we're delivering people and places from the power of evil or the paranormal, or however you want to sort of wrap that up.
Yeah, that's awesome. So to go straight back, to take it back, what was it that drew you to becoming a reverend and working with the church? Where did that journey start for you?
Okay, so in a sense, I suppose I'd always gone to church. My grandmother used to send me to Sunday school every Sunday. We used to spend Saturday night with my grandmother, gave my parents a bit of a break. And so, part of what we did was to get sent off to Sunday school. And I went, sort of went on from Sunday school to sing in the church choir. And there was something about it that, that sort of meant a huge amount to me, that, that I loved. And slowly I realised that it was something that I needed to sort of pursue, that there was sort of something missing from my life if I didn't do this. So it's like the bit of the jigsaw puzzle that gets put into place. And in a sense, that sort of, I've never really looked back from that. So it was something that I felt drawn to do, felt I had to do, and that, I've never looked back from that moment.
Oh, wow. So how long was it from being ordained? Was it earlier on in that process where you found out about being a deliverance minister in that side of the church, or was it a bit later on?
Okay, it was sort of towards the beginning of my time, really, when I went to. So the process is once they've decided that they that you're a suitable person to be ordained, to be a priest, you get sent off to something called theological college. In the Roman Catholic Church, it's called seminary. Anglicans talk about theological colleges. And while I was at theological college, we were supposed to have a course on the ministry of deliverance. It was like a sort of afternoon talk, but they decided that there wasn't very much call for it, so we didn't do it. So I missed out on that when I was at theological college. And then just after I was ordained, so I'd sort of arrived in the parish, and basically the idea is you arrive as a curate. It's like you're sort of on-the-job apprentice. And so you're sent to sort of work with somebody who's much more experienced. In this case, he was the vicar, a guy called Jeremy. And so, you basically get given a house. So the house I'm sitting in at the moment is the house that comes with my present job. But it was a sort of, the house that we got, it was late 1940s post-war council house. and it had been sort of bought by the original inhabitants who'd sort of moved out, and they'd sold it to the church. They'd moved out, and then various curates had lived in the house. So the house was. It was cold and dark when we saw it, but then it was an afternoon in January, so everything's cold and dark on an afternoon in January. And so the parishioners did at the house for us, and then we moved in. And the house just was still cold and dark, but we thought it was just a cold, dark house. It had been empty for 18 months by this stage. So we thought, well, actually, it's just, the heating hasn't been on at all. It's just really cold. A couple of months after we were there, our first child was born, son, boy called Thomas. And so we sort of decorated one of the bedrooms for him, and we put him in the bedroom, and it was great. But that was the coldest room of the house. We thought, well, actually, it's the coldest room of the house because it's got 2 external walls, and it's a cold house anyway. So we went around and bled all the radiators like you do, and then we discovered that there was a huge amount of air in one of the radiators, but it wasn't in his bedroom. We thought, well, actually, we'll just live with it. The house will warm up eventually. We'll have the heating on over the winter, and it'll be better. And it never really did warm up. So it was slightly odd. It was in the days when, it was 25 years ago now, but when your phone had to be plugged into the wall, so you couldn't carry it around the house. That's the sort of thing that kids these days, most people these days sort of think is utterly bizarre. But you had to sit at the bottom of the stairs to talk to somebody on the phone because that was the only place there was a phone socket, and you had to be sitting next to the phone socket. So you'd be sitting there, and there'd be this enormous draft that came down the stairs, and it was just this sort of, it didn't seem to be coming from anywhere. It wasn't coming from the loft or anything else, and the house seemed to be hermetically sealed. But still, we went around with a candle. There was no draft, and then you'd sit there and you think, actually, there is a whopping great draft coming down these stairs. We just live with it. My mother made a whole set of really heavy curtains for all the, all the internal doors, so you could sort of pull them across and make sure that the house was sort of warmer, and they didn't work either. So we just sort of live with it. Really, it's just a cold, dark house. And then about a year after I'd been in the house, 2 things happened. So I was ordained priest. So for the first year, once you're ordained, you're a deacon, which means you're sort of, that's like a probationary year, and then you're ordained priest. And after I was ordained priest, I was sent away on a course for a couple of days to learn how to do it properly. And while I was away, sort of things, sort of got worse in the house. So I got home. My wife, Laura, is really level-headed. She's a, very sensible person indeed. And she said it was so bad when you were away that it was like walking into an icebox. So when we walked into, when I walked into Tom's bedroom, right by his cot, there was just this sort of icy patch. It was awful. And in fact, it was so bad I had to bring him into bed with me. And, I think that's, there's something wrong with this house. And also, pretty much around the same sort of time, I had a really weird experience. So went to, I was reading at night, went to the toilet like you do, coming out to the bathroom, holding the bathroom door, going to push it open, and I could see a figure in front of me, right in front of me. And it was like a sort of, he was wearing a big mask. And it was like a sort of wooden mask with like sun rays on it and sort of eye holes, and I could see these grey eyes boring through the door at me with a certain amount of hostility. Opened the door, there was nothing there, and just sort of dived under the blankets. And Laura said, what's wrong with you? You look like you've seen a ghost. I said, well, I haven't seen a ghost, but I had this really strange experience. So I spoke to my boss, the vicar, and he said, you're a priest now, you can do something about this yourself. And he looked at me and he said, no, it's all right. He said, I'll come round, I'll bless the house for you. So he came round, he had holy water, he had a book of prayers. I think some of them were in Latin, because he wouldn't let me see what he was using. So we walked around together. He was sort of muttering these prayers and splashed holy water around the place, and then got back to the living room and sort of said the Lord's Prayer, and the house actually just got warmer. So instead of being a cold, dark house, it was actually quite a light, warm house. And the thermostat was cranked up all the way. We were turning the heating off, and the thermostat went down. There was no draft on the stairs. Tom's room, was really quite lovely. You could walk in there and not feel like you were sort of opening the door on on a walk-in freezer. It was so I realised there was something to it.
Yeah.
Spoke to the bishop, who sent me on some training, and I've never looked back.
Oh, wow. So when you sensed or saw that person on the stairs, was that the first time you sort of experienced of seeing possibly an apparition, or that feeling of seeing something?
Sort of. I'd strangely enough, when I was in theological college, I'd had some sort of idea that there was somebody around when I was in the flat. The flat was a new flat, so that was really weird. But it was like sort of walking into somewhere and knowing that you're going to meet somebody, but the place was completely empty. I was basically sort of decorating it before we moved in, splashing some paint around. I suppose it's probably a better way of describing it. But we did just have that sense of. So I just did just have that sense of somebody waiting for me. But this was actually quite quite specific. So I said I didn't see anybody at all. It wasn't as if it was like a sort of physical thing, but I could just sense, and it left a sort of a sort of impression on my mind somehow. Very strange indeed. Just to sort of finish that particular story, we were talking to one of the church. Well, I was talking to one of the church wardens a bit afterwards, and he said, "Do you like living in the house?" We said, "Yeah, it's fine," because it was at that stage. He said, "Interesting." He said, "They disturbed a Roman graveyard when they built the house." I said, "Okay, fine." We just left it at that. I'd wondered whether something had been disturbed when the house was being built. Who knows?
All right, okay. Just another thing to just touch on as well within that first experience. You mentioned that he wouldn't show you some of the stuff he had, or was it some of the things he was doing? Was there a reason for that? When the bishop...
Sorry? Why wasn't he telling me? I don't know, to be honest. That might just mean the sort of person he was, really.
Yeah.
But it was sort of preserving something that something of the mystery. As I said, for some reason he just never showed me what it was that we were that he was using, and we never really had a proper conversation about it afterwards.
Right.
I think I did try, and he just wasn't particularly interested in sort of following a conversation.
Yeah.
One of those things.
Well, we've gone over that one. So you did mention in the book about poltergeist activity in one story, experience. Sorry, and you mentioned that it could be from just the energy of people themselves. I think it was a boy and his mother that it was the story.
Yeah.
So do you think that there is sort of a supernatural cause for that, or is it sort of energy from within us that could cause something like that?
Okay. I think it's energy that's generated by somebody living in the house, really. So in that case, there didn't seem to be any supernatural cause at all, but you could feel the tension. So the story in the book describes a sort of mother and son living together, and various things were going wrong. There was sort of, rattling and banging and things being thrown around the kitchen. They got the Roman Catholic priest in a couple of times because she was a Catholic, and nothing seemed to work for them. So he did some investigation, and he said, has anybody been playing with a Ouija board? And she asked around, and it turned out that her brother had been playing with a Ouija board, or had at some stage in the past, been playing with a Ouija board. And the theory was that he brought something into the house with him. It was a bit far-fetched, but there you go. She got hold of me more by accident than anything else. She was actually intending to ring somebody else, but she got hold of me, and I said, "Oh, yeah, I might be able to help you with this one." And quite clearly, in their case, it was simply the tension that was building up between them. There was nothing else in the house. The Catholic priest had sort of blessed the house a couple of times. He'd celebrated a requiem mass, I think, and nothing, and there was still this sort of awful tension between them. So it came to a head one day when she was basically yelling up the stairs at him, and was just standing at the top of the stairs, taking it, sort of full of sullen resentment, and her vase broke, shattered. It was her favourite thing in the whole world, on the sort of shaft behind her, and it was at that stage that she called somebody else in. So, as I said, in that case, I'm pretty sure it was the tension that was building up between them. And I've seen a couple of cases of that before. Sometimes people have been unhappy in work, and they sort of almost like brought tension home with them, and stuff's moved around. But at the same time, if you're living in a house that's got some sort of paranormal presence, that can trigger poltergeist activity as well. So and it probably is still caused by your reaction to what's going on in the house, rather than by a spirit that's throwing stuff around. So I'm pretty much convinced that it's your own energy that's doing it, but still it's I think it's that sort of your reaction to the fact that you are with something that you are terrified of on some sort of level.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, as one of the things you mentioned as well, she got hold of you sort of accidentally. She was.
Yeah.
And I've noticed on a few occasions in the book, you mentioned that it's just people approach you maybe like a bit on a random case. Like there was one of the stories about when someone asked you if you were a priest when you was walking down the street because he needed help with the baby daughter.
Yeah.
And do you find a lot for yourself that it's like they say things happen for a reason, and you're in that place and they're getting hold of you because they need you, not necessarily.
Yeah, right place, right time.
Yeah, that you know what I mean.
Right place, right time. Yeah, that can be quite a strong element of that. So in that case, she really wasn't trying to contact me at all, and she looked me up in the phone, but that's another thing that doesn't really seem to exist anymore. And I think she was looking for the number above, and she dialed me by mistake, and she just got hold of the person who, by coincidence, could help. The case with the guy who was looking for help, he'd been that wasn't a random thing. He'd been specifically sent, and was told, if you go and sort of stand on the pavement in this particular place at this particular time, a priest will walk past, and you ask that priest, and they will come and help you. So that was a really weird thing. And so he walked up to me and he said, "Are you the priest?" Yeah. But we'd been, it was a sort of glorious summer day. We'd, by that stage we've got two kids, so we've got sort of, Tom was a toddler and Ben who's a baby, and we'd been out. I was in scruffy jeans and a really scruffy t-shirt, I hadn't shaved, and somebody just walked up to me and said, "Are you the priest?" Yeah. All right, yeah. Can you come with me? no, I'm not coming with you. Absolutely no way. And then the story sort of started to come out, and he'd been told, if you go and stand there, you will see, you will encounter a priest, and you bring him home with you. So I got his address. I changed into something that looks more like this than a scruffy T-shirt, and we sort of took it from there, really. But his a relation somewhere along the line was got sort of she was psychic or whatever, and she was the person who said go and find the priest. That wasn't random. These days people just find me anyway because they've read the book, or they've seen me on TV, or they've sort of encountered me in some other way. So that sort of random stuff seems to change. Having said that, I did have a conversation the other day with somebody that I could actually help, and again, she'd got no idea that I did this sort of thing. We just happened to be having a conversation, and so I was able to help her. So right place, right time. Coincidence? Who knows?
You mentioned about the aunt being a psychic, and it's referenced a few times about psychics and things. What are your thoughts along the lines of people being psychic and open to that sort of state?
I'm pretty much convinced that there are people out there who've got some sort of ability, and to some extent, actually, it's a natural ability. You apparently can go on things that sort of, courses that sort of help you hone your psychic abilities. But I live with cats, and the cats just know what's going to happen. They know when you're coming home. They know, sort of instinctively what's going on, and you think, how did you do that? And to some extent, actually, that's like a psychic ability, and there do seem to be people who can harness this sort of thing. In the book, I talk about a sort of friend's father, a guy called Frank, and about some of his experiences. But my friend Lucy, so grew up with him, said it was really annoying because the phone would ring, and he'd be sitting next to it, and he'd say, "Oh, it's for you." How do you know? Well, I just know it's for you. So, or he would say, before the phone rang, the phone's going to ring and it's for you. Just
that's really interesting.
Utterly weird. But then I describe in the course of the book the fact that he really wanted me to tell his story. And it was a story about Aberfan, the village in the South Wales Valleys that got destroyed by a cultic one day, and he'd had a sort of premonition that this was going to happen, but frustratingly there was nothing he could do about it. So that was sort of something that he specifically wanted to say. So I've encountered over the years quite a few people who've got sort of abilities. Some Christians would say actually this is something that's sort of they shouldn't have, and it's there's something evil about these abilities. I don't think they are. I think they are just random things that some people can do. Sometimes runs in families, and some people are just sensitive to things, things that are happening around them.
Yeah, I think it's like when you were saying about the first experience as well, when you got that feeling or that sensation that there was someone stood there and you could see it. I guess it's sort of along the same lines of being quite sensitive to things, and I think especially with what you do as well, you need that compassion and that empathy, and I think it probably opens up bits as well along them lines as well.
Maybe, yeah.
I've got another one. Is there a particular case from within the book that sort of stands out the most to you, whether it be sort of like the scariest encounter or, something like that?
One that stands out, there are a couple of fantastic stories in there that Lucy's story. So this is Frank's daughter. and sort of one of those stories about sort of it's about a proper haunting, really. They lived in a sort of Edwardian terraced house, possibly Victorian, actually it's a semi-detached house. And while they were living there, they could hear people running up and down the stairs, and they thought, that's somebody next door. Sort of various things sort of happened. They could always hear organ music. So it was like sort of jolly, sort of Yamaha type organ music, rather than the sort of da 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 the Phantom of the Opera music. And they could just hear it quite faintly. It sounded like it was coming from next door. So when the next door neighbours moved out, Lucy said to them, we'll miss the organ music. We've occasionally we've been able to hear it. It's never disturbed us, but and they just sort of, what organ music? Nobody in the house plays the organ. Although strangely enough, the old lady who lived in your house before you bought it had been the theatre organist in the cinema in town when she was a girl. Okay, and she'd got a Yamaha organ and she used to practice. And she was really good, but no, it's got nothing to do with us. So that was a bit weird. And then her son was reporting some poltergeist activity, I suppose. His shoes kept going missing. So he's one of these fastidious teenagers, the sort of trainers had to be paired up. And, trainers would just end up not paired, or in the washing basket, or on top of the fridge, or in the freezer, or places that nobody would ever actually put trainers. And again, sort of something not quite right. And then one day, Lucy was sitting there in the living room, looking out through the window, and so looking out through the door into the hall, and could see somebody coming down the stairs. And it was a sort of pair of slippered feet, and the bottom of a pink nylon nightie. Somebody coming down the stairs wearing this, and so she screamed and told it to go away, and it did. It wasn't there, and she called me in. But at the same time, she thought about the stairs, and she was talking to her father-in-law, who said, actually, really solid house. You can hear people going up and down the stairs all the time. That's not next door, because these houses are so solid that there's no way you could hear what's going on next door. So she called me in, and I said, you sure you're not making this up? Because I'm actually, despite everything that you might think, I am pretty skeptical about these things, so I will want to get to the bottom of what's going on. And she said, look, if I was going to invent a ghost, I would not have invented a ghost wearing a pink nylon nightie, would I? Okay, fair enough. And there were all these other unexplained things going on. So that was, sort of fantastic story. We sorted a house for her, and she's been very happy in the house since. And her son's shoes just stayed where they were. They didn't hear the organ music anymore. And no ghosts coming down the stairs in pink nylon nighties, or indeed any other night.
Yeah. Oh wow. So on a lot of the people you go to see, do you tend to always have someone else with you to come and help?
Yeah, I do try to. So basically the idea is that you take somebody else along. So when somebody gets in touch with me, I usually try to have a phone conversation with them. So if they get in touch by email, I'll sort of say, can I ring you? So have a phone conversation, and then do some sort of initial assessment. So what sort of things going on? What do I need? I'll then email out to the rest of the group. So I think there are 5 of us at the moment in this diocese. The diocese is like a county area that's controlled by a bishop. So I sort of email around, and if somebody's very often available. If not, I'll take somebody, another colleague. But I try to take somebody who's trained and from the group. And then we go along, and what's quite interesting is that one of us leads. So usually, but not always me. But then, the other person observes. And it's really interesting that, so one of you is commenting on actually doing house blessing or whatever. And it's fascinating talking to, my colleagues about sort of the stuff that they've picked up that I haven't noticed because I've been too busy either listening or actually doing the, doing the house blessing or whatever it is that we're doing. And that's really interesting. So you get this sort of insight about, somebody was talking about, actually the fact that the doors in a particular house have been sort of basically, the handles have been ripped off. So sort of, did you notice that? No, I didn't. Well, actually, was something really, really strange going on in this house because, the handles had actually been, ripped out of the, so ripped off the doors, and sort of, actually, maybe there's something more to it than just a sort of poltergeist activity or whatever it is that they're, that they're reporting.
Oh wow. Terrifying. I think.
Well, yeah, in that case, with a bit of investigation, that was the first time. The second time we went, it was basically yes, I suffer from anger attacks, and I ripped I ripped the handles off the doors, which is, angry, and then there's ripping, basically the entire mechanism for closing the door out of the door. That's pretty angry.
Yeah. So on a lot of the people you go see as well, is it the same sort of format when you get in there? Do you sort of do the same kind of thing every time, or is it change from person to person?
Depends on what it is. Yeah. I will always do something. So most of the time, I actually, sort of go through the process of blessing the house, because that seems to sort of offer reassurance as well as the thing to do that works. So I'm a priest. So what we're actually doing is sort of calling God to do, inviting God to deal with something. I usually bless the house. So we normally take that sort of format, to be honest. Sometimes we do different things. It would depend on what we think is appropriate. If it's purely to do with the house, we just bless the house. If it's if we feel that somebody's that it's something that is a particular problem with somebody, we might actually bless them with holy oil. So again, this is something that we use. It's blessed by the bishop once a year, and you basically anoint forehead and hands, and that's a sort of that's one of the things that we might also do.
So normally when you attend, a case, what are the typical things that you would take in your bag?
Typical things I take in my bag. Right, okay, so I've got holy water sprinkler. I've got the container with the oil. I've got kit for communion. So I've got, I will have bread and wine, and I'll have sort of, little cup. Unfortunately, I haven't got my bag with me. Sorry, it's in church where it lives. I'm at home tonight, and if I'd got any sense, I would have brought it home. So there are usually a couple of crucifixes in there. I've usually got salt. So we add salt for holy water. So I take little sachets of salt. And what else have I got in there? Whole load of books. So a whole load of books with sort of different resources. Some of them are sort of standard prayer books. Some of them, I don't usually take a full Bible with me, but I might on some occasions. And sort of stuff that I think I might need in terms of sort of additional, written resources. So they usually go with me as well. Various bits of cloth to wipe things up with. Like
really
wine.
Interesting thing you mentioned.
Sorry, I'm not, we're not integrated. Sorry?
Sorry? It's my fault. A really interesting thing you mentioned. Why do you put salt in the holy water?
Why do you put salt in the holy water? It's a very traditional symbol of, cleansing stuff. So, Salt has been used to sort of clean things for for centuries. There is a biblical prophet Elisha throws salt on water, but it's just a very traditional sort of symbol of cleaning. So if you're doing holy water, and holy water is water that's blessed by a priest, so it's not sort of special water that comes out of a sort of holy water tap, or it's not sent over from from the River Jordan or something like that. So it's just ordinary water, a bottle of ordinary water. So bless the water, bless the salt, put the salt in the water, give it a shake, and put it in the sprinkler. Sprinkler's about this long, and it's got a sort of it's got a screw top, and it's got little holes, and you basically just go like that, and the water comes out. Okay. And you try not to get it on things that are sort of bare electrics, or TV screens, or other things that might upset people.
Yeah, one of the other things I want to ask you about your kit as well. So when you mentioned about the books and obviously Bibles and things, do you have a special maybe type of book which you use? So is it like a deliverance kind of book with specific prayers in what you might use?
Yeah, I've got most of what I need is on a single piece of A4.
Okay.
So it as I said, I'd sort of bless houses. So there's just a sort of this side's the blessing of holy water, this side's the blessing of the house, and then I've usually got a stock of little crosses that I leave. So there's a prayer for blessing crosses as part of that as well. So most of it's just on a single sheet of A4. I've got booklets that I use. So on the occasions when I'm celebrating the Eucharist, Communion, Mass, whatever you want to call it, for the repose of the soul of the dead. So if there's a ghost, if somebody's actually seen something like Lucy, I actually celebrated the Eucharist. I said Mass for the repose of the soul of the dead lady in this case. So I'd need a booklet for that, and then I hand out the booklets and people join in. One of the things that is a theoretical possibility is exorcism, where you're actually expelling a demon. It's not something I've ever actually done, but just in case I do ever need that, I've got a booklet that's it's got the Idiot's Guide to How to Do an Exorcism in there as well.
Oh wow! So have you? I know obviously you mentioned that you've never done a physical exorcism. Have you ever been present to someone having to perform one?
No, it's so for us basically, exorcism is one of those things that you do if somebody's possessed. Mm-hmm. So there's been a big increase in people who've basically presenting themselves to say, I'm possessed, can you do something about it? The problem with that is that if you turn up and talk to a priest and say, my entire body, soul and will has been taken over by an evil spirit, will you get rid of it for me? Your entire body, will and spirit has not been taken over by an evil entity, because the evil entity wouldn't let you talk to me. Yeah. It's one of those things that sort of if you think you need it, you don't. But just occasionally people have come across sort of genuine cases, usually in psychiatric hospitals where it's just sort of left the the sort of mental health team just sort of scratching their heads, and they might actually call a priest in to deal with it. In the book, I describe one it's a second-hand story, because these things are so rare. It was somebody who was experiencing sort of spirits of lust, greed, and death, or whatever it was. So they got a couple of priests in, and they performed an exorcism. And they walked out thinking, actually, we're not convinced at all. We think she was faking it. Whereas the medics were absolutely convinced that she had been possessed and that they'd driven out the demons. But the problem is you can't actually do it again to try and, try and see which one of you is right. So we're, if somebody is genuinely possessed, we're actually looking for three things. First is a knowledge of things that they shouldn't know. So usually damaging things about somebody. So in this case, when they walked in, the hospital chaplain had led a dissolute life or whatever. He had a couple of affairs, and the woman seemed to know about his affairs. So that's one sign. Another sign is that somebody's got preternatural strength. So somebody you walk into a room and somebody throws the dining room table at you. You're sort of wondering, actually maybe this is a sign that they're possessed. Well, after you've ducked. And the third one is that very often you'd be looking for knowledge of languages that you've never studied. So there was another one that somebody described, a little old lady who lived in Cornwall, who could speak perfect colloquial Arabic. She lived in Cornwall for the whole of her life. She probably never met anybody from that part of Arabia, but she was able to speak Arabic. And so again, she was, maybe she was somebody who was possessed by some weird entity. But as I said, the chances are that this sort of thing, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in a psychiatric hospital, and it is a sort of theoretical possibility, but sort of vanishingly rare. And there are also questions about you will not be able to give your consent to this sort of thing, because the demon, having found a nice, warm, comfortable house, isn't going to want to be expelled. So you've got sort of legal questions about sort of giving consent to a religious rite that you don't want to happen to you. It's quite an interesting one. A friend of mine's a lawyer who studies these things.
Yeah, and one of the other things I did want to mention as well, mention in the book, is I like, because in a lot of books you read about people's experiences and the paranormal, supernatural things, they just tell you the stories. But reading through one of your chapters, you sort of explain the things, like you explain what poltergeist activity is, and then you mentioned also about like a place memory and true haunting. And I like the fact that you break it down, so then even if you didn't sort of get it, it's there in plain English, rather than having to sort of think about it. You're just getting the story, but you're getting the whole picture with it.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I've sort of tried to. It was a book I didn't really want to write. So I got outed by the Sunday, by the Sunday Times. They got a story about me, and they were going to publish it anyway. And I said that's not true, and they said, well, tell us what really did happen. And before I knew it, I'd given them an interview. So I appeared on page 3 of the Sunday Times with a photo, and somebody rang me the following morning and said, would you like to write a book about it? I said, well, I don't really want to. And I said, I don't really want my name being out there. He said, look, you're on page 3 of the Sunday Times. You're on the front page of the Express, the Daily Star, and the Mail this morning. I think your name is already out there. Would you like to write a book? So I thought about it, and eventually he talked me into it. So, but I thought, if I'm going to write a book, it needs to be sort of useful to explain what we actually do. So part of the book is about this sort of ghost busting, the first part, about sort of, stories to do with houses really. And then sort of beginning to look at this sort of exorcism part in the second part of the book, that sort of, dealing with people. So, that's what I wanted to do, to sort of, in a sense, sort of explode some of the myths about what we do. Because what we do really isn't particularly exciting. Nothing ever happens when we're there. The only thing that's sort of really, really frightening that happened was one day when I was standing there and was, sort of blessing holy water. All the lights in this room started going out, and I sort of reacted, and the people who were with me didn't. They were terrified, but they weren't terrified of the lights going out. So what's going on? And it turned out that they just had had new lights put in the kitchen and they got the wrong, the wrong sort of light. So they kept sort of overheating, going off, and then coming back on again. But I was terrified, and they weren't, and that was the only really dramatic thing that's ever happened when I've been out on a case. Occasionally, I've been frightened of people. So sometimes people can be very violent, very erratic. But it's not the supernatural that sort of that frightens me in that case. It's actually sort of being with somebody who might actually hurt me.
Yeah,
which is one of the reasons why we always take somebody else with us.
Yeah, of course, yeah. You mentioned, obviously once your name was out there and you was in the newspapers and then you got approached. What did the church think about that? What were they happy with you to go ahead with that, or was there some concerns, or that they wanted to keep it quiet? Like you said, you just didn't really want to share that experiences.
Yeah, they seemed to be relatively happy about it. So I spoke to my bishop, who is actually was really supportive. He's particularly supportive of the fact that that I got outed by the Sunday Times. So I was sort of it was I just felt really stupid. So I spoke to him and he said, don't worry about it. This sort of thing happens all the time. So he was really nice about it. And then I spoke to him about the book. Is it all right? And he said, yeah, okay, go ahead and do it. And in a sense, that sort of, trying to get the story straight is really, has really been quite useful. So a lot of my colleagues have come to me and said, thank you very much for writing the book. People can actually understand what we do. So the church by and large has been positive about it, in as much as they've known about it. Because a lot of my colleagues out there have got no idea that I've written the book. So it's quite interesting, and so I've been on daytime TV a couple of times on This Morning with Phil and Holly, so by and large, vicars never watch daytime TV because we're usually doing other things. So the sort of vicars in the world have got no idea that I've been on. Well, actually, they don't really know who Phil and Holly are, let alone watching the program. And so that was quite interesting. So people were recognizing me in the street, but my colleagues have got no idea. Because they just never watch daytime TV and they're not into that sort of thing. And so that's been a bit weird. So I'm sort of better known by by some members of the general public than I am by some of my colleagues who do the same thing that I do.
Yeah, I think what's been pretty cool is a lot of people say something. They don't really seem to act like the church accepts the paranormal, the supernatural.
Yeah.
And the fact that they've been so supportive with you and being able to share this as well, it just shows a completely different side as well, that it is more accepted.
So when I was doing one of the researchers for This Morning, the first one I spoke to said, I just can't believe that the church actually does this. And well, what? Well, the church doesn't believe in ghosts. I said, well, actually, people like me get appointed specifically to deal with ghosts. Oh yeah, okay, fine, yeah. And it's just this sort of, people have just got this assumption that the church doesn't approve and doesn't want to know. And part of the reason for writing the book is to say, actually, we're here to help. And we're here to help, basically offering a free service as well. So, you can go online and you can get sort of people who will take lots of money off you to basically do what I do free.
No, I agree there. Like you said, the fact that you go out there and you're willing to help everyone, and as I said earlier about that empathy and compassion for people, you can see that, and I think that's what people really appreciate as well. And like you said, some people take advantage of certain situations, I think.
Yeah, and sort of one of the things that we're always aware of when we go is that people are absolutely terrified. What more than anything else, you're just offering reassurance. So, these things are surprisingly common, but that's something that I do tell people that, actually, this isn't unusual. We deal with quite a few of these over the year. And, there's nothing to be sort of embarrassed about or whatever. But people get really frightened. So we just sort of need, a huge amount of empathy, which is one of the reasons why not calling ourselves exorcists is helpful, because we don't really want people to be afraid of us, as well as being afraid of, afraid of whatever it is that's around. So if you walk in and say, "I am the exorcist," that's people are going to be automatically frightened of you, because they've seen the film and they're expecting sort of projectile vomiting and head spinning and all that sort of thing. Whereas I tend to walk in and say, "Hi, I'm Jason. I've been sent to deal with your problem." So I don't quite say I've been, I understand you've got a tear in the fabric of reality. I've just come to fix it for you. But, but it is a bit like that. It's like being a gas man, really. You just sort of walk in and, okay, what's your problem? How can we help you? Yeah, okay, let's get on with it, and trying to sort of calm people down and provide them the reassurance that they need to get through this.
Oh, that's amazing.
So throughout your entire career so far, what's been your sort of most memorable moment? One that, maybe you thought was the most interesting, or, something like that?
What's been the most memorable moment throughout my ghostbusting career?
Yeah,
through everything.
Yeah, all of it.
Through all of it. What's been the most memorable thing? Oh gosh, I don't know. It's despite the fact that I say that my life, these things are undramatic. I love doing what I do. So almost every day is memorable because I meet sort of amazing people and I do amazing things, even though I'm just a sort of bog standard vicar in a sort of it's the most memorable thing. I think everything's memorable, really. Over the weekend I've done a couple of weddings, and it was just sort of really lovely doing doing weddings for people, and just that sort of making it memorable for them makes it memorable for me.
I think as well, like,
Sorry, some rubbish answer.
No, it's all right.
It's a good answer.
It's like the full circle, isn't it? Like, you're helping people for every day. Like you say, people just coming in to talk to you. You got your weddings, funerals, and then doing this side of it as well. It's a credit to you as well, doing the full circle and helping people, every day.
Thank you.
Day to day. No, it's
really
nice.
But it's about doing that. You say that full circle, just sort of sort of being there for people, and it was really lovely today that some guy walked in and I sort of said, "Oh, how are you?" Because we've had loads of conversations in the past, and he said, "Yeah, I'm doing really well today." I thought that's fantastic, because most of the time when he turns up, he's just sort of he's having he's got problems and life's tough, and he just came in today to say, "I'm doing really well," and that was lovely.
Oh, lovely. Well, Jason, we have come to the end of this interview, so thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and being a part of our show this evening.
No, you're very welcome, and thanks for asking me. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
No, thank you. And last thing I do need to ask you, so where can people find your book? This is the one.
Where can people find my book? They can find it, so online, or in usually branches of Waterstones will have it.
Yeah.
But you can get it online. It's out in paperback, so it's got a different cover on it. But see if I can find a paperback one really quickly. So the paperback looks like that.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So it's me with with my hat on, and so it's what I call the aged thespian picture. So it looked like a sort of old actor. And it's it's available in Waterstones. You can get it on Amazon, and it's it is out there. Almost certainly pick it up secondhand at this stage as well.
No. So again, from you, Lorna, thank you again. Thank you so much for taking your time out and coming on. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. It's good to see you. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
So guys, I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. We will be back next Monday with another episode, and we have a few more interviews coming up which we will announce this week. Again, thank you to Jason for taking time out. Thank you for watching this evening, and we will see you all soon. Good night. God bless. Adios.
Bye.